Seeing how you armchair historians, you history buff, and just internet history people seem to already know of or have heard about the Soviet invasion to Afghanistan, with the stingers and massacres, and I think Bin Laden was a thing, and altogether depressing stuff for a third world proxy conflict during the Cold War, I'm just gonna skip that whole part. But if you do want a quick review, it went like this, and this is very oversimplified. Alright, I'm gonna try to do this in one take with only 2 gasps of air, starting in 3, 2, 1. Afghanistan would have a communist coup. Due to this, a lot of people didn't like the new communist government and would start revolting against this government. As the revolts became more and more religious, the Soviets feared the rise of fundamentalist ideas spreading to Central Asia. That in the USSR would view Afghanistan as
it's free real estate,
causing the Soviets to invade Afghanistan. The US would see this and would start sending arms to the many Mujahideen factions. An example would be the Stinger. As the war became more and more unpopular within the USSR, the Soviets would pull out of Afghanistan, basically leaving the communist Afghan government on its own.
Got him.
You guys don't know how many times I had to redo that. And that's just me greatly oversimplifying this conflict. If you want a better version, you can watch this guy or Wikipedia or whatever you use. Just don't make it be some conspiracy YouTube channel, please. As the final Soviet troops put out of Afghanistan on February 15, 1989, the many Mujahideen groups would then begin to set its aim towards the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, led by Mohammad Najibullah at the time. Mohammad Najibullah would have an uphill battle to fight. Due to this, Mohammad Najibullah would work on the policy of national reconciliation, which was started by this guy, but it would intensify under Mohammad Najibullah. To greatly oversimplify it, it called for a nationwide ceasefire between the many Mujahideen groups in the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. It would then work on getting rid of the PDPA monopoly within the government and help replace it with more broader people. While this policy was successful with some Mujahideen groups and leaders, most of the major factions and leaders would not accept the deal, which made the situation more bleak for the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan.
いいかみんな、パキスタンより西のイスラム世界じゃ挨拶はこう言うんじゃ。まずスマイルで、アシャラーム、アレイケム。
Heck, even the CIA expected the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan to collapse months after the Soviet pullout, but it didn't take into account the Soviet advisors, the Soviets sending money to the Afghan government, and the Soviets leaving a surplus of Soviet gear. These supplies and money and all that good stuff would come in to help at the Battle of Jalalabad, where Mujahideen leader Koko Hekmarti, Ghodbunden Hekmarti, and Abdul Rasul Saif would try to change the mostly guerrilla warfare at the time into a conventional war with Pakistani support. They planned to kick off this conventional war by first taking over the major city of Jalalabad. The Battle of Jalalabad would be a massive disaster for these two Mujahideen groups. The Mujahideen fighters would face a whole lot of bombing from the Afghan Air Force and a shit ton of Scud missiles. But even with these setbacks, the Mujahideen would still continue their struggle with Afghan weapons and Pakistani support. Pakistani support that would greatly be biased towards a certain group, Ben Man. What I'm trying to say is Pakistan would send most of its support towards Hizb Islam, led by Ghodbunden Hekmarti, while overlooking warlords like Ahmed Shah Massoud. While Ahmed Shah Massoud and Ghodbunden Hekmarti were both Mujahideen warlords fighting against the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, their factions would come into combat and dispute between each other, mostly within the Logar and Parwan regions. But even with this infighting, the Mujahideen were still all united under the one goal of getting rid of the Najibullah government. During the siege of Khost, where the local Afghan garrison would give up to the many Mujahideen factions. As the battle became more and more dire for the Afghan government, infighting, economic issues, and later the fall of the USSR would become more prevalent issues, causing President Mohammad Najibullah to step down from power. The next day, Afghan General Dostan would see this and would simply defect with his militia to Ahmed Shah Massoud, to where they'd give up the city of Mazar Sharif to the Mujahideen, where they would then begin to race towards Kabul. At the same time, what was left of the Afghan government then fell into a panic mode as the Mujahideen began to amass around Kabul and other government areas. Seeing this collapse, the UN would propose a peace talk among the many Afghan Mujahideen factions. Some of the factions the UN planned to talk to was the Jamaat al-Islami, led by Ahmed Shah Massoud, and the Hizb Islami, led by Ghodbunden Hekmarti and Pakistani supported. Now, one thing I could say about these groups is, why do they all like to have the same name? You know what? This was just how Afghan politics was at the time.
Are you the Judean People's Front? Fuck off. What? Judean People's Front? Well, the People's Front of Judea. Judean People's Front. Wankers.
These peace talks were accepted by a lot of Mujahideen leaders and factions, where they would meet in Peshawar to work on the Peshawar Accords. Most factions, like I said, went to these peace talks, except for Ghulam bin Hekmarzi and his faction Hizb Islami. On top of that, some of the Sunni groups didn't like the Shiite groups, and some of the Shiite groups didn't like the Sunni groups, and some of these groups were divided by ethnic lines. To be brutally honest, I'm so a tad bit confused about who was in the talks and who wasn't, who got sidelined, who didn't get sidelined. Let's just say it was very complicated, and we'll leave it at that. This caused Kabul, which wasn't completely occupied by any faction at the time, to become a tinderbox waiting for anyone to set it ablaze. Seeing how both sides were beginning to come to the conclusion that politics wasn't going to solve the situation, Kabul would be set ablaze as Hizbi forces, and now the Islamic State of Afghanistan, no correlation to ISIS, would fight over the street of Kabul. While initially during the fighting the Islamic State of Afghanistan had the backing of many groups, the alliance would begin to break apart due to sectarian, religious, and political divides between the many groups. This would cause two Mujahideen groups to defect to Ghulam bin Hekmarzi, or at the very least just give a very big middle finger to the new government. One would be the Iranian-backed Shia Islamist group Hizb Wadat, where they would leave Massoud's faction because of growing tension between fellow allies. One ally would be Ittihad Islami, which was a Wahhabi-backed Saudi group, and that went as well as you guys think. Dostan would also defect to Ghulam bin Hekmarzi. I don't know why, but he did. I really couldn't find a reason why. But the battle was brutal, as both sides would begin to bomb the city with artillery pieces and would fight in urban combat against each other. The Battle of Kabul would last for about 4 years. Within these 4 years, the Battle of Kabul would be plagued with people purposefully shelling civilians, kidnapping civilians, or just executing civilians, which at time was based off their religious or ethnic background. On top of that, almost every faction would go around and loot the city of Kabul, and almost every faction would partake in one sort of these war crimes, with some doing a whole lot more than the other. If you want to see details about this, I'm going to leave a link in the description by the Human Rights Watch organization. Man, this is low-key depressing. As the civil war raged on, more and more factions and sub-factions, tribes, and local warlords would begin to take control of their own local cities. Some loyal to the new government, some loyal to Ghulam bin Hekmarzi, and some loyal to themselves, and some loyal to their own ethnic populations. Due to this, Afghanistan fell into more chaos, with government factions just in the north fighting against each other, and now local militias and warlords in the south of Afghanistan. It seemed like southern Afghanistan was waiting for a power vacuum. And this concludes part 1 of probably a part 2, but possibly a part 3, but most likely a part 2 video series about the Afghan Civil War. Thank you for watching. Remember, Bazistan Zindabad. Wait, you're here after credits? Well, if you want to know who sponsored this video was sponsored by Suleiman the Magnificent. Yes, the man himself has sponsored this video. And for a simple subscription to the Janissary Force, or at the very least the Ottoman Empire, under the code Autobots, you too can carve out your own little empire. Probably in the Balkans, but results may vary and I don't know where you live. Remember, if you put the code Autobots, you can get a lifetime subscription to the Ottoman Empire, and the first 999 people who sign up will get the free Janissary pack.